This is Gerrod Galliano, Christian Clausen. Welcome to Coffee Chat. Today, our topic is going to be about annuities. People say annuities, Christian, and some people, they run for the fences. Some people run to the annuities. Why are they so polarizing in terms of an investment? Let's talk about that.
Absolutely. Well, we have to think about it. There are some good ones, there are some bad ones. Like I think starting off with what types of annuities are there? We got variable annuities, we got fixed annuities, and we got fixed indexed annuities. And typically the variable annuities is what get most of the bad press.
Yeah, variable annuities, kind of a vehicle back in the day where you can get diversification through an insurance product. Used to be kind of neat in the 90s because you have to go to a broker and get all these individual stocks, and it was a pain in the butt, or you'd have to buy some funds, and those were tough to find back then also. But the annuity back then, the variable, gave you a lot of options. But now that you can do all those things through an account, they're just not as popular because of the high fees.
Right.
So Christian made a great point, but even going back further, what is an annuity? Talking about the basic structure, these are investments that you make through an insurance company.
Yep.
So, and a lot of times they say, well, how's my money based on what the market does? Is it in the market? How's that actually work?
So what the insurance companies do, and it's depending on if it's variable, then it's actually in the market. Now we're having mutual funds that's basically with an annuity wrapper around it. And like you mentioned, a little bit much higher fees.
Yeah.
If we talk about a fixed indexed annuity, now there's a principal guarantee on the money. Mm-hmm. And the way that the investment or the insurance companies do that is they take the money, they take 95% of it, protect it by the treasuries, and there's a very strong regulation of what they have to invest it in.
Right.
And then the other 5 or 10% is what they use, and they buy options in the indices that you pick. Because when you buy a fixed indexed annuity, to start off, you have to pick an index, and there's usually between 10 to 20 different options. Mm-hmm. And then depending on which option you pick, they're going to buy the option of that. So, which is a good benefit.
And guys, we see this all the time. It's one of the reasons for the buyer's remorse or the love for the vehicle is during the time of the actual contract, interest rates are such a big factor in what these companies are going to offer you. So think about it. If you're giving up money for 5, 7, 10, 14 years, that's a crazy long time. What are you going to get for that? And to get your money, the companies have to offer you a bigger carrot on a stick. So when interest rates are really low, they don't have to offer you as much because there's nothing else out there. But when rates are high, like a couple years ago, we were getting CDs at 5.5%, 6%.
Mm-hmm.
These companies were having to offer you 9, 10, 11, 12% on the S&P 500 for safe money with no fees. And if you get into that, that's a pretty happy person. But if you're the person who got in 2020 with a 4% cap on the S&P 500, and then a couple of years later you get a CD that's paying 6%, you're so miserable. So you can see why these are polarizing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then the other option are fixed annuities. And they're basically, we treat them like CDs. They're not CDs, they don't have FDIC insurance, they're insured by the insurance company that offer them. But they tend to pay a little bit more than a CD. So if you have the option, pick a CD or pick a fixed annuity usually offers at least 1% higher, than the CD. There are some restrictions that we have to pay attention to before we make that decision, but it's a really good alternative. Instead of taking all the safe money and put it in CDs, now we have options to use the fixed annuities as well as fixed indexed annuities, to kind of boost the return, because we know inflation is not going to go anywhere. Mm-hmm. And we know that right now CDs paying 2.5%, 3%, not really a good option. Now we have a few other.
Yeah, so think about it, when you look at annuities overall as an investment, we're talking about the three things everybody wants with any investment. They want safety, they want growth, and they also want access to their money. So the annuity is obviously very weak in the access department. You can only maybe get 10% of your total per year in a lot of these fixed index annuities. But you get the safety and you get decent growth if the rates are high enough. So we want to try to look at these as just what are they, how do they work, take away the demonization. They can be good, they can be bad, but you want to understand the pros and cons of anything before you get into it. And when you think about that as an investment, if you have a bunch of IRA money, money that you don't plan on touching anyway because of the taxation, let's say you're 62 and you have $1 million pre-tax 401k, you don't want that money to all come out at once anyway. So if you're not thinking about moving the money regardless, it makes a little more sense for that sacrifice of excess.
Yeah, and it's all about allocation. Like these are all great tools that we can use. And as long as, we see people where they're like, oh, annuities are great, I'm going to put 100% of my assets in it. Don't do that. Don't do that. We're talking about like never a majority portion of your investments to go into a vehicle like that. Like he said, the principal protected, that's great, but the withdrawal is a little bit limited. So, but the benefits in a lot of times outweighs the cons. And so it makes sense to take at least a portion, of the allocation to put in. But again, everybody's is different, and we need to make sure that, it's the suitable thing to do, as a fiduciary.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. It comes down to the individual. Like you hear us say so many times, it's probably pretty annoying, but it really does come down to the individual in terms of what risk do they want to take, what gains do they want to make, how comfortable are they with some of that money inaccessible. If you have more pensions, if you have more Social Security, great income, maybe you're more likely to do something like that versus if you need to start accessing the money right away. So these vehicles can be great. They can be inappropriate too. And we suggest you need to always understand what you're getting into, how's it work. They are not all the same. There's things like misleading bonuses, there's misleading fees, and there are also really good ones. So you really need to dig into that. Don't let a salesman talk you into it. Instead say, look, I really need to see how all the pieces work. And if you feel comfortable, then it's something that you might want to consider.
Yeah, and there are so many strong insurance companies out there, and they're not all the same. So you have to make sure don't just do research on the product itself, but also the underlying company. Because when it comes down to annuities, it's how strong is that insurance company that's offering that product.
Absolutely.
And so that's going to be a big part.
Awesome. Well, look, thanks for having us, Christian Clausen, Gerrod Galliano. This has been Coffee Chat. Join us next time for some more scintillating financial topics.